Good evening and welcome to the bungalow.
The bungalow of the spiritual penthouse.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. It's switcheroo day where everything is backwards. Nomen, how are you doing? You're not Nomen. You're Otis. This day, your Nomen has changed. Would you like to explain yourself?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Wow, he's being Gnostic, but not telling us the secret power of his name.
Well, it's one of your favorite bits from the Odyssey.
Oh,
it's my name.
Right, yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Ootis.
Is that Greek?
Literally means not nobody. Somebody.
Father of Polyphemus. That's an inside joke. For our
but yes,
our episodes
the classical reference is that Odysseus, when he asked by the Cyclops what his name is, says "outis" in the Greek, meaning nobody, which is hilarious because then he's of course getting stabbed in the eye by Odysseus, and he's shouting, "Help! Nobody is
no one is hurting me. No one is blinding me."
And so, like, all his neighbors are like, "Well, I guess he's fine. Like, if nobody's doing anything."
The great classical joke.
And then as he's leaving, he's about to get away with it. He's about to get away with it, but as he's leaving, he just flips them the double bird, and he's like, "By the way, blindo, my name is Odysseus."
Yeah, and then he has the wrath of Poseidon.
It turns out the Cyclops was Poseidon's child, one of many.
Classic.
One of many irresponsibly begotten progeny.
Which the Greek gods were famous for.
Yes.
Did any of them not have illegitimate children?
Oh. I would.
What about Hephaestus? You never hear about Hephaestus?
Yeah, I was thinking Hephaestus. Yeah. And I want to say possibly
Hephaestus always seemed like the kind of the cuckold of the gods.
I want to say Hermes probably as well.
Yeah, Hermes is kind of a bit androgynous.
No cease. Yeah. Well, ex quovis ligno non fit mercurius is one of the classic sayings, and it's referring to Hermes, the images of Hermes which were set up on the roads to indicate sort of road signs, road distances. There used to be little proverbs written underneath them.
Oh.
And but they were always in the image of Hermes, who was a traveler.
Mm-hmm.
And but the term means not of every type of wood is a scholar made. And or not of every type of wood is a Hermes made. So, and it means not of every type of person can be a scholar, because Hermes is associated with wisdom as well.
There we go.
It's kind of a Gnostic ethereal figure.
So I'm done drinking my my naturally sweetened abomination of a drink, since you're razzing me for that earlier, and it was off-brand for the show, since we exclusively drink alcoholic beverages.
You were drinking water that one time.
Oh yeah, that's probably because it was exceedingly hot.
It's exceedingly hot today. I'm drinking water.
Oh, there we go. Not allowed. So today I kind of wanted to talk about the bourgeois understanding of virtue, and the reason for that was we came across a little Tweedle social media thing from our nemesis, the Catholic gentleman, which is goes like this. They have this quote from St. Vincent de Paul, the most powerful weapon to conquer the devil is humility. St. Vincent de Paul, which is
True.
a fine quote. It's very, very true. Actually, I remember there was an Eastern father who talked about how Satan can match you, can defeat you in every conceivable aspect, except for humility, which he has none, which is actually very true. That Satan reviles at any notion of humility, which is why he hates Our Lady so much. But it's not so much the quote that is which kind of caught our attention, but the picture behind it. There's a gentleman there, and we weren't sure if he's homeless or a painter. Would you see? He might be wearing like a painter's frock, but we're kind of wondering how what this has to do with humility.
Yeah, so to break down the image, first I got to get it out of my system. The guy in the background on the left-hand side,
right,
definitely looks like a cross between Review Bra and Neo from the Matrix.
Right. So to give context, we should probably show people who this Review Bra sort of guy is. So should I do that?
Sure.
Right. So here we go. So this is Review Bra.
Hello, everyone. This is Running on Empty Food Review. Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen,
this is enough. This is enough. That's sufficient. Anyway, yeah.
Sufficient knowledge of your Review Bra.
Yeah. Anyway, that's he looks like that combo there for sure.
Right. Yeah, I just think he looks kind of Italian. Like that was just
standard,
that before. Like
standard Italian,
standard
Balenciaga.
Italian, yeah, like the Balenciaga sort of, serious face sort of thing. I wonder if that was like, if it was fashionable in the 90s, just to, when you're Italian, to look serious, because I don't know that many Italians who come off of that seriously. Actually, I do know one. I knew quite a serious or a church musician who was Italian, who was an intimidating personality. But
like what about what about like Mussolini?
Well, sure. He seemed kind of jolly though in his own way.
La 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 la.
Yeah.
You can hear like people getting shot and firing lines in the background.
Yeah, but they're like, they're pretty
the spaghetti and the meat. Yeah. Like there's like a dog playing a hand organ.
Yeah, that's how I always viewed Mussolini.
Like, it was,
Machiavelli is probably like that too. He's probably like
Machiavelli. He's just like,
he's probably wearing like,
you have to kill
a little hat and just like.
Giovanni, bring the newspaper.
Manja.
Oh no, the rain coming down too hard to ruin my flowers. Stupid dog ate up my flowers. And he's like waving the newspaper as he's running down the street.
Well, he was after the printing press, so he could have potentially had some kind of a newspaper or pamphlet.
I think that the anachronism really makes it all that more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So now we're really off topic. The picture.
So, yeah, the picture. I'll bring that back up. And
I certainly hope he's sort of a tradesman engaged in whatever his
task.
Engaged in whatever his task is, because then it is more or less appropriate.
Somewhat, yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess like the thing is like a tradesman person should be that kind of well dressed though. Like if you live in
put together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if he's he could be a coal worker. Like
yeah,
that could all be coal soot theoretically.
Yeah.
So if he's a coal worker, then it is a more or less which is like shoveling coal all day is not a great job.
It'd be
which
garbage.
Might be my guess. But it is better when the collar's together and stuff like that. Now, the quote being from St. Vincent de Paul, I wonder if he's supposed to be a kind of just a sort of the down and out, a sort of down and out person who's quite poor.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so when we saw this picture, we both had a sort of similar reaction, which was
confusion.
Well, what does this have to do with the quote?
Yeah.
If he's a coal shoveler, it's perfectly acceptable, I suppose. Sure. Although he could be a very arrogant, you never met him. He could be an arrogant coal shoveler.
Yeah.
The drywallers I've met in my life haven't exactly been the most humble people.
No, because it's, just because you have a crappy profession doesn't necessarily make you a humble guy. In some ways, it might make you more irascible.
Or arrogant. I mean, as Plato points out, the tradesmen are always think they know everything because they know one thing really well.
Sure, yeah. That actually really is very true.
Have you noticed that? Yeah. Have you noticed that that's the thing?
Which dialogue is that in? Actually, that's really interesting.
Oh goodness, I can't remember, but yeah, it's somewhere in there. But I remember that sort of. He talks about it when he's trying to find the definition of like what constitutes statecraft, and sort of he notices that the people who make wheels think they know everything.
That kind of reminds me of an anecdote too. When I was working at Alberta Plywood, which is a factory that makes plywood. And to fund my way through college, doing night shifts, there was I was in the liberal arts college, and I was trying to tell this gentleman I was working with about the value of philosophy, because he just thought philosophy was just a bunch of garbage that just, rich kids kind of studied. And I said, no, it's really valuable. It kind of informs our whole sort of perception of reality, and what we determine makes us happy. And she's like, oh no, everyone knows where happiness comes from. And I was just like, so what? Okay, what do you think? It was like everyone has their own happiness pie. You got your own slice of happiness pie because you ride your bike to work instead of drive a car like a normal person. And that's your pie, and I've got my pie. I just got to fill up the pie of happiness. And it's just like, oh, that's an interesting philosophy. It's like, it's not a philosophy; it's the truth. And
well, this is yeah. This is the point we're trying to get at, which is that you could be poor and arrogant. Hey, fun fact: poverty in and of itself is not a virtue.
Yeah, but
it's a condition.
That is kind of like a. I think that does actually come from kind of the bourgeois sort of understanding or lack of understanding of virtue.
Yeah, but it's me saying that is just like wow, because nowadays, in this especially in this ecclesiastical climate, as we might say, it is considered to be that. It's I mean, we had this out.
Not just blessed are the poor in spirit, it's blessed are the poor, full stop.
Pretty much. I mean, we kind of had this out with in the pontificate of Pope John the 22nd and William of Ockham. And Ockham more or less accused the Pope of, owning stuff. Franciscans don't own stuff. The legal fiction sort of for the Franciscans up to that point was they don't own stuff. The Pope owns it, and they're squatting on it.
All right.
And John the 22nd was like, that's silly. No. And some of them didn't like that. He's like, you own it. They're like, no, we don't own it. He's like, yes, you do. You're using it. You own it. And he's like, no, we don't. And Occam.
I like your representation of the Franciscans under Occam. That's so very
yeah.
I'm sure
the Fratricelli.
Yeah.
And Occam is just like, no, and basically accuses the Pope. You have so much stuff, and that makes you a bad man. And the Pope is like, I have the keys, and that makes you excommunicated.
All of Christendom was in moral outrage.
And so that's kind of where it ended up. Occam ended up under I think everyone just died eventually, but Occam ended up under the protection of a secular lord. They didn't own it. He was just squatting, and he never got his doctorate because the Pope was like, no doctorate for you, excommunicate schismatic. And then the Franciscans, I believe, own stuff. And that's kind of how it got settled. Hey, voluntary poverty is a good exercise of virtue. It's a good exercise of extraordinary virtue of charity.
Sure.
Humility. If you put yourself entirely at the service of others, if you're just begging and you're not doing anything, like a number of the Franciscans were at the time, and it happens to be now. You're just begging for food and I don't know, luxury items. Anyway, no. Pull myself together. If you're just begging for things and you're not actually doing anything at all, you kind of are terrible. St. Francis actually did things, important things.
Well,
so,
like trying to
preach the gospel.
The Mohammedans,
yeah, preach the gospel. In the 14th century, Franciscans reached all the way to China. There was
oh wow, I didn't know that.
There was a missionary church in Shanghai.
Wow, so even before the Jesuits even existed.
Oh yeah, no, and they preached at the court of the Great Khan.
Wow.
Yeah, no, they went after it. They were pretty good back then. Subsequent Franciscans seem to think that just arguing over stuff in universities was a good way to go, but it's a better way to go than the way they're going these days. But yeah. Occam maybe should have gotten off his duff and go preached to the people in China instead of just argue with the Pope over some nonsense that didn't really matter that much. Anyway, where am I going with this? Oh yes, voluntary poverty, especially if it's order towards a purpose, is good in and of itself. It's not virtuous if you bear it well. Neutral. If you have involuntary poverty and you bear it well, it's virtuous. If you have involuntary poverty and you bear it horribly, it's not virtuous at all. And if you're poor and you're arrogant, you don't have humility. Because we need a definition for humility, especially now, given that everyone likes to pretend to be humble by dressing themselves in sackcloth and ashes while they're fasting and then showing everyone how miserable they are.
What?
Actually, no, we've won up the Pharisees. Yeah. We've won up the Pharisees now with the likes of someone like Cardinal Roche. It's everyone else has to wear sackcloth and ashes. And everyone has to, and the liturgy has to be all sackcloth and ashes, and no one gets to have any nice things. Yes! Humility achieved.
Humility achieved. I love the humility. The humility is great humility to to fill up your house with luxuries while using vestments that are like a tablecloth with a hole cut in the middle of it. That's just the pinnacle of humility, isn't it?
Well, Chesterton said that the saints in the Middle Ages the great humble saints in the Middle Ages wore hair shirts, and on the outside they wore gold cloth. But nowadays, our would-be self-proclaimed saints, they wear the silk on the inside and they wear the hair shirt on the outside. Look at how humble I am. Is that a little bit like refusing to wear the shoes that a family in Italy has made the papal shoes, lovingly crafted these papal shoes for hundreds of years? They're proud. They're proud that they get to serve the church. Instead, you spend money to mail your shoes all the way to Buenos Aires and back.
Oh.
Instead of, so everyone knows, look at me. I'm sending my normal person shoes all the way to South America to get fixed. And then they're going to come all the way back. I'm so humble. Everybody watch.
I didn't know that was the thing.
Yeah, that was not only did he produce the papal shoes, but he sent his. We know this because it was a news article, which means he told someone.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing.
That's humility. That's humility, John. The pontificate of humility.
All right. So what is our working definition of humility?
I think humility, according to St. Thomas, is understanding your place in the universe.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Is that there has to be sort of a level of self-knowledge to attain humility.
Yeah. Well, it's wisdom,
and then acting
right?
in accord. Yeah.
Wisdom is to understand. Wisdom is to understand things and causes as God understands them. The closer you are to God's understanding of things, the wiser you're said to be. Because you have a kind of a top-down understanding. You understand things through their causes. That's wisdom. That's what philosophy is attempting to do. It doesn't involve happiness pie. Philosophy is an attempt to understand things through their causes.
Right.
And the ultimate philosophy, the love of wisdom, would be to be, the lover desires to be basically be one with the beloved. God is wisdom.
Right.
The love of wisdom, the highest philosophy is to be as closely united to wisdom as possible. And wisdom is to understand things through their causes. God, of course, understands things perfectly because he understands things through himself being the cause of all things.
Yeah.
And so humility is to know where you, in that chain of things, is to know where you are and what it is appropriate for you to do.
Yeah. It seems closely related to prudence as well, since prudence is sort of a right action based on knowledge.
Yeah, it's a prudence is the sort of the queen of the practical, the moral virtues, and it orders the rest of them, and it is related to wisdom.
Right. I think that there are certain degrees of humility, though. Like, I think that a more, because I do think that a level of humility is to sort of to prefer a supernatural humility is to prefer dishonor than honors. You know, that is at least in the lives of the saints, a testament to a person's humility, is that when they are because then you're sharing with the honors of Christ, because you're receiving
for yourself as a person, but not for your office.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
But all human beings have a state in life.
Right.
So we have to make a distinction here between the individual in seipso and the state in life, or the states that one occupies, the offices, as Cicero says, the duties. The word duty is has a little bit of a Kantian set of baggage to it, or puritanical set of baggage to it. But by duty, what I really mean is the offices that one fills. So one who is a father has to act with authority, and their children have to honor him.
RESPECT, respect, authority, OB.
You said you wanted more memes today.
Yeah, I know. I walked right into that one.
Come on, come on. Respect, authority, come
on. And
Totally
so,
yeah.
Darn it.
Yeah, a father's duty has to do with it.
There needs to be respect showed to a father.
Right.
And there needs to be authority in the household, and everything needs to be properly ordered.
Yeah.
Okay. Bishops should be treated with even higher levels of deference.
Right.
Priests should be treated well as well, like they have consecrated hands. So there's things that they can touch that I should not touch with my bare hands.
Yeah.
That's not a question of pride. That's a question of humility.
Ooh,
because that's a question
so
of
prideful.
order.
Yeah.
That's a question of order.
Only the priests could touch a chalice. That's so prideful.
And part of this problem comes from our postmodern understanding. Everything is a kind of a power scale, whereas those who are in positions of power hold that power expressly for the sake of serving those under them.
Mm-hmm.
But they still the dignities that come with the office and the honors that come with the office apply to the office. To be an apostle is a very honorable thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
And we have to show them and their successors honor. But to desire honor for itself with no reference, like with just mere reference to you as an individual, is ridiculous.
Honor me.
For what, right?
For my humility.
Yeah. That's basically. I mean, honor me for my humility should be like the
biggest oxymoron.
But it's like the motto of the synodal way. This
honor me for my humility. I'm so humble.
Like on the deathbed too. It needs to be like Orson Welles. It just needs to be like, honor me for my humility. He like dies and like the Mozart's Dies Irae starts playing.
Oh, that's just so great. It's just so right on the nose.
But I have passed. Honor me for my humility.
Oh my gosh.
Well, look at us, Jim. We're a festival of conviviality.
Have you ever noticed that guy in the back in the right-hand side is just having a great grand old time? He's just like, he's humming along.
Just surrounded by
smiling. Look at his face. Yeah. Like he's surrounded by Muppets.
Well, look at us, Jim. We're a festival of conviviality.
I never noticed that.
He's surrounded by Muppets, and Tim Curry is doing his the best musical number in the film, and he's just like, this is great. Like he's dressed like a pirate. They're singing a shanty song, but it's also a musical bit. Yeah, he's having a good. Most of the live actors in that movie look like they're having a great time.
Yeah, pirates and Muppets. What more do you want? Apparently, all those songs, they actually the recording is actually taken from the footage. It's not. He didn't actually like overdub it in like a studio. Like
he also apparently somewhere I read he did that bit in one take.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just like, upstage lads, this is my only number. He just because he did so many musicals.
Sure, yeah.
That he just did it all in one take, and they were like, "Good, perfect, that's great."
That's phenomenal. Oh man, I gotta watch that movie with the family sometime soon.
That was my favorite movie growing up, and it was like there was always sort of like some sort of like bargain that you would have to. It was like it was. I mean, no one ever lost their flesh, but it was almost like the Merchant of Venice, like I'd be like, okay. When my sister would babysit me, it was sort of like we have to watch Muppet Treasure Island. She's like, but then you have to watch The Little Mermaid at some point. It was like, I'll do it. Anything to watch that movie again. And so I've seen The Little Mermaid like 1 billion times because it was her favorite film.
That was her favorite.
My favorite film was Muppet Treasure Island. And so it was like these two bargaining gems.
That's really funny. I don't. Yeah, it's funny because like I'm kind of like realizing I don't know why kids like love like a lot of kids. I don't think I was this way as much as like my sister, but a lot of kids of certain disposition always want to watch the same movie like over and over again, or there might be like 3 that they cycle through, but then they don't want to watch a new movie. They're just like, no, I want to watch this movie. And,
I think I just because it was great, but I'm like that as an adult too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we just watched the Curse of the Black Pearl, the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one again, and I'm just like, I watched it. I was like, this is such a good movie. Like, we just ended up buying the digital copy instead of renting it again because we're like, I'm gonna watch it at least once more.
Yeah, sure.
Like a year from now, I'm gonna want to watch it again. Like it just, love that film. It's so good. Top-notch acting. I think we've discussed this before. I think.
Yes, yeah, we have. This has been a common thread of conversation for sure. But returning to humility.
Many things that Captain Jack Sparrow has, not humility.
Yes, yeah, it's not in his repertoire.
I don't know if anyone in that film really has humility.
No, I mean like Orlando Bloom's character is just too generic to have anything like humility. He's just
must rescue
heroine. Damsel. Yes,
must rescue damsel. Beep boop.
Beep boop. Yeah, he's super beep boop. But it's just it's a perfect foil to like Jack Sparrow. Like it's just. Which is the most like straight.
And then he falls off.
The most like straight-laced, generic Victorian sort of Englishman ever. Or like, English. Well, like English youth, I suppose.
Yeah, and then the sort of the pompous commander of the Navy, and then the overindulgent father who's just like distraught at what's happening, like oh no.
Yeah, not the most complex characters in that movie, but
maybe like I think agent like I think Seaman the what's his title, the guy Gibbs, First Mate Gibbs or whatever. That guy, he's kind of got the humility. He's like, oh well, Jack Sparrow said so I'm just like, oh well, it's just my place. It's not my place, but maybe there'd be pirates in this water. It's like, shut up. Okay, I don't.
Well, I mean, I guess like there could be there could also be sort of like a dereliction of duty by being too obsequious as well, too, right? Like that could be.
No, but he's just like he's a helmsman. No, he just does his job, and then he's like Jack Sparrow's like, oh, stick to the code. He's like, I stick to the code, and then he's like, what happened to them? He's like, I don't know, but he's got captured. He's like, okay, we'll stick to the code, and then he like takes the boat away.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be. I'm trying to think of like what
he doesn't try to be like he doesn't try to like upstage him. You know, I don't know.
Are there any sort of like notable literary characters in literature who are sort of known for who are kind of like demonstrate sort of heroic humility? One that actually comes to mind, jumped to mind right away when I thought that was the priest from Diary of a Country Priest. But that's kind of the only example that I can think of, because he actually is so humble that he actually basically brings about his kind of like his own not demise, but like he kind of like he's like because he's so dutiful and so sort of like, but he also like is very sort of like aware of his sinfulness, that he's that he does sort of like he kind of like goes down this sort of like trajectory of a it's not a tragic demise, because it's actually like sort of his part of his like journey of sanctification, but it's it's just a very sort of from a worldly sense a very sort of unfortunate trajectory. But does anyone come to mind for you for literary characters who
I don't know if it's a heroic level, but there is a sort of a dignified level of humility in Pip in Great Expectations. When he's an adult. He's an adult.
Yeah, that's a good.
Because I mean, he realizes, especially when he realizes that he's. It's implied that the guy who's funding him, who's this escaped criminal, is done a number of misdeeds, and these are ill-gotten gains that are funding his education. And he's like, I think I should report this. This is not cool.
Yeah. Well, and then even then he goes along with like pawns, like with like the daily sort of like signaling of the cannon and stuff like that, and he's just like, well, I mean, it's his house; he's allowed to do what he wants.
You do whatever you want, I guess. I don't know. But that's just, he's kind of an average character. I don't know if I mean, there's a lot of literary characters who do their duty and do it quite diligently and aren't pompous. The captain from Treasure Island.
Oh yeah.
To go back to it. Both the literary version and Kermit the Frog.
Right.
But they're in positions of authority, and they don't get. It's obvious it doesn't get to their head.
Right. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, not the literary Captain Bligh, but the real life Captain Bligh. So the real life Captain Bligh is an example of humility. So he, the crew mutinied, but he was not. Unlike many other captains, he actually was very restrained at his table, but the big beef with him was that he was the quartermaster on the ship. But I mean, it was fairly well known he was eating cabbage just like the rest of them.
Oh, wow.
But his entire crew had contracted various venereal diseases in tropical islands, as one might, and they'd kind of gone bonkers. And when him and his officers were in their lifeboat, the way that they survived was by him rationing out their food and water so carefully that they were actually able to stay alive long enough to get to land.
Right. Marie Antoinette, who famously is like, the kind of the scourge of liberal society. Yeah, exactly. But who, why don't you tell the story, since you're more well versed in it than I am?
Well, I mean, the famous "let them eat cake" was she was literally saying that the cake flour rations, which were reserved for baking cakes, should go to the poor people if there's no flour for them.
Yeah.
but she was
a very reasonable thing to do.
Charitable. She was a very charitable woman.
Yeah.
Now she dressed to the nines, as we might say. Well, I
Sure,
mean, that was it was part of her station.
Yeah, exactly. She was a public woman.
So
yeah, so that's good. It's a good example of virtue.
That is humility.
Yeah,
like great kings and saintly kings and queens showed humility because they understood where their place was and what they had to do.
And it wouldn't be humble for them to sort of like dress like a beggar.
No, it would be a show.
It would, yeah. Let's go.
Well, that was like Julian the Apostate. You know, he sort of went around dressed like a philosopher, and he didn't shave and he didn't shower. He's like, look at me. I love wisdom so much. Look at how philosophy I am. Those Christians are silly.
So what is it particularly about bourgeois culture that where an understanding of like the virtue of humility falls so flat upon sort of I mean bourgeois culture in itself isn't sort of necessarily well, there's evils, misguided notions about it, but I mean, you could be like Saint Therese of Lisieux came from like a bourgeois family. There's nothing like inherently evil about having sort of like a bourgeois sort of leniency or sort of like not necessarily having sort of a great taste in art or coming from like a mercantile background or something like that. So why is what's lost about it like as a tendency, because we're not trying to point at any individuals.
The historical tendency is for the middle class, the sort of the new money, to usurp the established order on the assumption that, hey, rags to riches, I was poor and now I'm not, therefore I am virtuous. It's the sort of the old trap that people have fallen into for many thousands of years, which is like, God blesses me for my hard work,
right?
When I die, honor me for my humility.
Right.
That sort of thing, right?
But that sort of disposition does seem kind of inimical to humility.
You get this with it's all over it's all over, and I remember once it was a Daily Wire, they're backstage, and that producer of theirs, Jeremy Boring, that evangelical, he was going on and on about like, oh, it says you only rest one day a week in the Bible, blah, 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 blah. I work all the time. I work so hard. Blah, blah. I work so hard. And then I made all this and I work so hard. I made all this and I work so hard. He's going on and on and on. It's like, hey, your job, not as hard as some other people's. So shut up. Like, I need Saturday off to spend, first of all, with my family. But to recover physically from the effort that I'm putting in. It's kind of like that. And you get this with Catholics too, especially the Americanist kinds, like
Stripe,
the whole Stars and Stripes bit, like
1776. More than enough.
Yeah, like that. I remember listening to Timothy Gordon. He was shooting his mouth off. He's like, yeah, I could totally do roofing for like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week or whatever he said. It was some absurd numbers. Like, hey, man, have you ever put in shingles? No, but I could do it. No, you can't. Have you?
There's a guy.
We're far enough up north. The one guy on the show had done it. He's like, no, you can't. And he's like, yes, I could.
But then didn't he had like a bad back or something like that?
Yeah, but I have a bad back, so I could go to the moon if I want to. I just like my spaceship is broken. Like,
right?
Shut up. Like if you've never been on a roof carrying a tool belt. First of all, tool belts like ruin your hips. But if you've never been on a roof carrying a tool belt for like 10 hours a day, hauling shingles directly in the sun. Most roofs are directly in the sun.
Yeah.
You're cooking. And
Yeah.
America's worse. It's way hotter down there.
Yeah.
No. Those guys are tough.
Yeah.
They're tough guys. They may not be the most humble guys I've ever met, but they're definitely tough guys. They have a number of other virtues, perhaps, but some of them are humble. Some of them might not say things like "I could roof 10 hours a day, 6 days a week."
Right.
Unbelievable. But you do get this. You get this especially.
He doesn't know what it actually entails, right? Like,
then that's not humility. That's not humility. You don't understand your place in reality. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. But you get this a lot with the kind of the internet grifter crowd. Like, I work so hard. Like, yeah, but like you
you're
make phone calls and you're like you're looking at Facebook news and you're not swinging a hammer. Like, shut up.
It's true.
But you get that attitude that kind of like, I built this all from scratch. And sometimes old tradesmen will give you the old, like, back in my day, I could work so hard. It's like, I don't know about that. It sounds like the fish was this big, like, I was there. And the fish wasn't that big.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is sort of like this, amongst conservatives generally, there's this lack of willingness to sort of admit that of the support structures that we depend on. Like, I don't think, and it bleeds into Catholic life, but it is really un-Catholic, because none of these ideas really originate from Catholicism, like the atomic family and this obsession with the rags to riches narrative. I mean, we have like no one gets makes something from nothing except for God. Everything that we have is a gift, and sort of like it's so backwards to sort of like to buy into this sort of into this mindset. But I mean it's human, it's concupiscence at its basis. But I mean, I think that there is also sort of it's concupiscence at its basis, but there also is sort of like a culture that sort of informs the way that we act. And sort of, I don't think that American and Canadian Catholics are doing a good enough job of creating that sort of Catholic counterculture that's different than sort of like, this socialist sort of like pity culture and pity and envy culture, but the one that actually acknowledges that, that there's a wider society that we need, that it's not just like Hillary Rodham Clinton who says like it takes a village to raise a child. That's actually an authentically Catholic idea, because we need community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a rant that I often have, or thought that often comes to mind for me.
Yeah, well, there's you did this sort of double-edged debate. Is this sort of like rags to riches, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is, by the way, it's supposed to be an oxymoronic saying. No one can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Like, you need to grab something else besides your own.
Right.
Like, if you get down on the ground and then grab your bootstraps and try to like get up by pulling on them, and it's not going to work.
No.
But at the same time, also the sort of learned helplessness and the kind of the weird obsession with poverty as though it were kind of like virtue. And it does originate with socialism, and there's the notion that the worker is virtuous because he's a worker.
Right, yeah.
Not that the worker is virtuous because he applies virtue to his work being his office. So as a father, I have to provide for my family.
Yeah.
And so I have to, I take up a chosen profession to do that. And when I do the work of whatever I'm doing to provide the means of feeding and clothing and sheltering my family,
Yeah.
that work should be done well. It's virtuous to do your work well with sort of, that's what a good work ethic is. It's not being
Right.
obsessed with work. It's not being a workaholic. It's not the Sigma male grind set. Got to get my money, get paid so I can, Andrew Tate around in cars and get arrested by the Romanian police. It's that I do something of value, which is exactly what Andrew Tate and the people who worship him were not doing.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that I think like Elon Musk is trying to tap into a little bit, except he's like a showman.
Right.
But it's like, oh no, you work real hard and you come up with something and you make a good product and you make it well. But it's so easy to get sidetracked from that. Like you have to do your duty well. That's that's one of your favorite sayings of St. Philip Neri that runs so contrary to the follow your dreams nonsense that we've imbibed since the 60s heavily.
Well, even before, like it's like Pinocchio is, when you wish upon a star, that's from like the 40s. And it's your dreams come true. And a good
man does his duty and doesn't follow his dreams.
Yeah. No.
I mean, by following your dreams, you just kind of.
Well, you end up just being miserable and single.
Well, everyone around you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You end up causing society to collapse.
Yeah. It's funny though, because some people have like sort of the dream, have like what other people would consider dream jobs. But I guess like, I guess like if you're like I don't know, if you're an athlete, or if you're I don't know, an actor. But I guess like the only reason why these like jobs are sort of like on their level is because we have this sort of notion of following your dreams, that we put these people on kind of the pinnacle of our society, right?
I did read this really great story once online that I liked, and it was a guy posting, and he was talking about how he grew up and he was very autistic. Well, not very autistic, but he was autistic, and he was obsessed with steel manufacturing. And so when he graduated high school, he got a job at a steel mill, and he just like learned everything. So he kept getting promoted because he was really into it and he was really good at it, and he made like all his friends.
Dreams. Yeah.
But his dream happened to be good for everyone around him. Like it was awesome. It was just like, I was like, oh, funny. That makes me so happy. Like he's just because he never had any friends growing up, and then he worked at the steel mill, and he got more used to being social and stuff. And it was the best thing that ever happened to him was working at a steel mill, John. It was like the best thing that ever happened to him. That makes me feel so good. Actually, I really like that.
That's one of the few exceptions where following your dream is entirely appropriate. I guess that's like if your dream has to like intercept with like what God's created you to be good to be, and your circumstances are able to provide for you. Like.
Well, I mean, there are people who are so blessed that happens, right? But for a lot of us, we end up kind of making ends meet by doing things we're not particularly enthusiastic about.
Well, but the thing is that's nice, and where the sort of like the reality of sort of like blessedness actually is that we can realize that God actually puts us into the circumstances and the realities that are actually going to make us the happiest if we just accept them. And that's kind of what I came to realize what our Lord means when he says that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And it becomes that way once you sort of accept and realize that where you are and what you're doing is exactly what God has intended for you at that moment. And whatever journey you're sort of aspect of your journey you're in. And I mean, maybe, you know, your actions have gotten you to a place where you don't want to be, or your circumstances have gotten you into your place that you don't want to be. But yeah, I mean, like in that moment of sort of like of understanding and of that gratitude, then you can realize that those circumstances, as undesirable as they might be to sort of your general sense of where you think that you should be, because it's all in your head. I mean, once you put those thoughts aside of where you think you should be, then all that, and you accept it, then all that remains is to be grateful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and every avocation has a sort of consolation. So I think you've noticed this, and then I definitely always notice it. And if you're in a trade, you sort of, what did I do today? Well, I have a catalog and I made a physical imprint on the world. Like it's really obvious what I did today. So that never really bothers you. Like, what am I doing with my life? Well, I know exactly what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah.
And if you do something really well, you're like, look at what I did. That's actually pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of a consolation. And for people who engage in more abstract ministries, they could, if they do something good and they help someone, they can see that happen, and they can kind of then they can kind of
you can see the difference it makes in a person's life.
Yeah. And I think each kind of thing that we do, if it really is a duty that we have, we'll have something like that. We don't necessarily have to like it, but we can kind of see, like, we can see clear to what its purpose is. I think we have to think about it kind of from the point of view of ends. We have to think of it as sort of the final cause, like, what am I doing here, and why am I doing it? And it's like there was some stuff today where I was like, why am I doing this again? I love my family.
Exactly. Well, and that's kind of why I really think that St. Alphonsus Liguori is really sort of so correct in saying that the greatest the most sort of abundant graces that we receive is through our vocation, because sort of like everything that you do, and that's such a difference from, like, you know, when I was single, because everything that I do revolves and sort of terminates sort of in my family, and if it doesn't, then I know that I'm kind of doing the wrong thing. It just brings so much order to your life and to your reality when you have a vocation. It's just, and all the stuff that I did before I had a vocation is able to be used, but it's a lot harder to see that when it's not, you know, part of your life.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely it's a difficult state, and it's one of the perils of the 20th, or not the 20th, but the 21st century church is a sort of mass congregation of unconsecrated lay people who are just
have no vocation,
single,
like
is this. And this stupid notion coming out that that's just as good as being a monk or a priest or being married or whatever. Like, no, man, like, you need a thing. You need a status VA.
You do,
Not status VA, status vitae. You need a status vitae. Like, you need the state of the road. Let me tell you, where I'm at, the state of the road's not very good. No, the potholes everywhere. But the state of life, you need a state of life, and because you need duties, you need things to do, and those things need to not be a choose your own adventure book. Like, you really need to have them thrown at you to really dig into them. You can't pick them.
And it's unfortunate that, like, you know, there's so few avenues for people to happily live a celibate life as well now, because the religious life has just been so ransacked, and it's really hard to, you know, live your life as a priest while, you know, anywhere, unless you have like heroic virtue. Like, I mean, I think that's what it kind of takes almost now. As a former diocesan seminarian, like to successfully live as a priest in a diocesan function, I think you really do have to have heroic virtue, because you're not going to have any support from your dicastery or from your presbyterate. Like, I mean, unless you're in a really exceptional diocese, which is sad. I mean, it's kind of a sad way of ending the episode. But I mean,
doing their part to humiliate you.
Yeah, I guess.
Remember that when I die, honor me for my humility.
And remember,
you will receive your reward in purgatory.
Good night, everyone.